Commissioner, you may now begin.
Good morning. This is the August 26, 2022 meeting of the Housing Opportunities Commission's Development and Finance Committee. I'm Jackie Simon, Chair of the committee, and my fellow commissioners are Richard Nelson and Jeffrey Merkowitz. We are meeting this morning virtually. I will turn the meeting over at the moment to Chelsea Andrews, our Executive Director.
Thank you, Commissioner. Good morning, commissioners, staff, and members of the public. I think the first agenda item is the minutes and getting approval of the minutes from the last meeting.
Yes. Is there a motion to approve the minutes as circulated?
So moved.
Second.
It's been moved and seconded. All in favor indicate by saying aye, please.
Aye.
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 The minutes are approved as they were circulated. Our first agenda item and our only agenda item this morning is a review and update on Hillendale Gateway. Ms. Andrews,
Yes.
please.
Thank you. So commissioners, we're here today to present to you an update of preliminary development plan and approval of additional pre-development funding related to Hillendale Gateway. As you all know, this has been a project that has been ongoing for many years, and we are closer and very close to making progress in regards to moving forward with actual development of the site. However, as a result of the economy and many changes, inflation and other outside forces, there has been a shift and a change as it pertains to how we look at this project in terms of how it should be developed, as well as some potential increases in costs that you will hear about today. I will say that the team has been extremely nimble and quick in responding to some of those external economic factors and has done a great deal of work to ensure that we maintain affordability, that we're able to stay as close on track with timeline and delivery, as well as produce what we still believe to be a best of class outcome with this development. And so with that, I will turn it over to Zach Marks so that he could walk us through the project. Thank you.
Thank you, Zach Marks, Chief Real Estate Officer. So we'll just flip to the next thing right after the table of contents. Yeah, one more. Thank you very much. Yeah, so as the executive director mentioned, there's a lot that's sort of usual about where we are in this process. As you know, having done many of these projects and completing some of these projects right now, some other really impressive projects that the commission has been a part of, have delivered this year. And as you know, the planning that goes into these projects is extensive. It's multi-year, and the environment you start in, and as it relates to entitlement, design, permitting is certainly not the world that you necessarily deliver in. And so in the case of many of these pre-development periods, these multi-year pre-development periods, there's often a period of time at the end where we had a sense of when we would be in a position to get financed and build. But then as we sort of come around the backstretch, the date gets a little more concretely understood. And so this is we're in front of you today in that way.
Is that a pun, Zach? Sorry.
Probably accidentally. I can't help myself sometimes. I apologize. So in that way, this is sort of an ordinary presentation in that we are coming around to where we do have our permits. We are nearly fully designed, and we can sort of see what the finish line looks like What's different about where we are is that over the last year, as everyone I think is aware, there have been substantial issues with the global supply chain. It's changed the economics on pretty much every industry there is, and it has, if you've looked ahead at some of the slides, it has upended on a temporary basis, but we're confident on a temporary basis, but it has upended the typical relationship between, in the case that's important to this deal, the structural systems. Whereas wood over podium was always cheaper than concrete, and steel was somewhere in between. As we got into the prescient system, which is a type of steel system, we for 2 or 3 years with this project, we were seeing our thesis hold up that we could do that we could perform at the same per unit cost, but deliver substantially more units because of the limitations around wood frame and podium. But this past year has upended that relationship, and there are two pieces to it. There's the supply chain piece, and then where everything went up. Lumber went up, steel went up, concrete went up, but steel went up more than the other two. And then steel had the extra, has had the extra issue of the war in Ukraine, where there are many materials and elements and inputs that Ukraine is, I think, the number 8 steel producer in the world. They also have many minerals there that are used in the finishing process, and so on and so forth. And so the advent of that war, obviously, there are issues even specific to that persist. But what we have seen is that right where we are right now, because that's where Hillendale is right now, we have to respond. And as the executive director mentioned, we are constantly reevaluating our position at all times, even outside of less normal times like the ones we're in right now. We're constantly reevaluating our position. And in this case, while there are clear signs that the supply chain issues are easing and that inflation is receding, this project is very close to being ready to need to start. And so in reevaluating the position, what we've seen in talking to our consultants into the market is that we can effectively build in concrete right now at a slightly cheaper price based on information from June, July, which will wind up being the peak of the supply chain issue around these materials. And so there's kind of a few reasons why we're looking at making this change. So one, first and foremost, is certainty of execution. We want to recommend the system that we're comfortable that we can finance, but that also brings the most certainty to you that we'll be able to close in a number of months here. And so because concrete is predominantly domestically sourced, it gets around some of the issues that we just talked about, brings some real certainty there. Concrete is also not a proprietary system, so it allows the general contractor to bid to multiple concrete subcontractors, ensuring that what you'll see a little later in the packet in terms of the raw material prices have gone substantially down. And so, the best way to capture those things as the inputs don't necessarily immediately translate to the change in the price in the systems right away. It takes a while for that to feed in. And the best way to get ahead of that is to be in a more competitive market. And so this will allow the commission to take advantage of that too. And so there's really sort of two paths here, but staff is strongly recommending a change to concrete. We are fully permitted to build in prescient now, but we remain concerned about some of these issues, not just around pricing, but frankly around things like delivery and some of the finishing elements. And we just feel that given that we can change the concrete and actually
I'm on a call,
that we can actually be comfortable about where the pricing is with concrete, but remove some of those issues around delivery, we think is just frankly a more responsible decision to make at this point. And so there are two components of additional pre-development funding. We wanted to show you that, again, we're not going through this inflation spike right now. We would be here to tell you we're closing in 4 to 6 months, and the piece that we would need to get to the end of that would be 1.7 million. But as part of our recommendation to convert to concrete, that would require an extra 2.5 million in pre-development to do some of the redesign, as the way in which the structural system works is obviously different. So there's a little bit of design revision we have to do, not major, and not major enough to trigger any issues around our entitlement. We've talked to DPS and they're comfortable making administrative changes to our permits. So they've been really collaborative on that front. And so, and in spending the 2.5 additional in pre-development, we already know that the concrete structure is 3.5 million cheaper at this point than the Prescient steel system, as a result of some of those in the bullet point 3. Really, those are some of the drivers of why concrete has already seen more of an abatement than the steel system. So we would spend 2.5 to save 3.5, and we feel like that's a good exchange in order to get you all certainty of execution, and to also capture what we are anticipating will be some the receding of some of this pricing inflation that we've seen in the last 12 months. So that's kind of the overview. I'll just quickly pop through the slides, and obviously, as usual, feel free to stop me with questions. We'll pop to switch to the next slide, please.
Heck, I'm also happy to help here.
Yeah, actually, Catherine, if you want to go ahead and drive now that I've rambled for 5 minutes.
Yeah, no, sure. Yeah. Good morning, commissioners. For the record, my name is Catherine Hollister. I'm a senior financial analyst in the real estate division. We can just hop to, page 10. Great. So on page 10 of your brief book is an update on the project status and current development path. As Zach has mentioned, staff has been navigating the challenges around historic inflation and material supply chain issues that have been impacting the construction industry as a whole. In the case of Hillendale Gateway, these issues have resulted in a 27% increase in the hard cost construction budget since last summer, when HOC issued its general contractor procurement for the project. While inflation has affected all divisions, steel has been disproportionately impacted, as Zach mentioned, due to the recent and continuing geopolitical issues around the processing and shipment, which is described in more detail on page 11. As a result, Prescient, the structural steel frame system, which the development team had intended to use at Hillendale Gateway, has lost its historical cost advantage to concrete and has driven staff to evaluate a change to concrete system. Page 12 depicts the historical cost advantage of Prescient compared to concrete since 2017. Staff conducted numerous pricing exercises throughout the pre-development period, and until this year, Prescient maintained a cost advantage to concrete. That advantage switched for the first time in June 2022. Page 13 of your brief book outlines the advantages of switching the structural system at Hillendale Gateway from Prescient to concrete. Notably, concrete is currently cheaper, is domestically available, has experienced less price volatility, and has a more competitive subcontractor environment, which we believe will capture additional savings beyond the 1.5 million in net savings currently projected. Additionally, the switch to concrete allows for the development team to incorporate other value engineering design changes to bring down the project's overall construction cost. The development team is working closely with CBG and its subcontractors to identify additional cost-saving measures that do not negatively impact the performance or marketability of the development. Finally, because the project has 10 months of site work to be completed prior to going vertical, there is sufficient time to redesign and amend the permits without delaying the vertical construction start. Staff expects to return to the commission later this year with a proposal to launch site work ahead of the full construction mobilization. Page 14 summarizes staff's request for additional pre-development funding in the amount of 4.13 million, which includes approximately 2.1 million in soft costs related to the change in the structural frame, 1.7 million in ongoing pre-development efforts and pre-closing financing costs, and 309,000 in ground lease payments. Again, as Zach mentioned, even with the cost of redesigning the building to accommodate a concrete structural system, the hard cost savings would result in net savings. Page 15 illustrates the additional financing sources that staff is pursuing to offset both the increases in hard construction costs and the rising interest rates affecting Hillendale Gateway. Those additional sources include HIF, LIHTC equity, mezzanine financing, state and federal energy funding, and deferred developer fee. Notably, this chart does not include additional resources that are now available thanks to the passage of the Inflation Reduction Act, which Hillendale Gateway is well positioned to benefit from. Per the regular process, staff will return to the commission for approval of a financing plan prior to full construction start. Pages 16 and 17 summarize the previous commission approvals for pre-development funding for Hillendale Gateway. To date, the commission has approved approximately 10.1 million, of which 7.9 million has been spent, 1.7 million has been obligated. Approximately 500,000 is unobligated. The additional pre-development funding requested here in an amount up to 4.13 million in the form of a loan from the OHRF would not be drawn upon until all previously approved funding is spent. All pre-development loans from HOC earn an interest at the applicable federal rate, and all pre-development expenditures will be reimbursed at closing of construction financing. I do want to note that moving forward, staff will request pre-development funding all at once, similar to how Wheaton Gateway pre-development budget was funded versus the installment approach that was used here at Hillendale Gateway. Pages 18 and 19 provide additional information on the value of passive house at Hillendale Gateway. As earlier discussed, the development team is working closely with the GC and its subcontractors to reduce the overall cost of the development. While we are looking at all options, the team has spent considerable time evaluating the cost and value of passive house at Hillendale Gateway and have found that there is little to no cost premium for passive house. Even in this scenario, assuming a 2% cost premium, the payback period is short and the return on investment is high. Overall, the value is net positive. Additionally, passive house is a critical component of Hillendale Gateway's energy efficiency and resiliency goals and makes it eligible and competitive for a number of grants and funding opportunities that would otherwise not be available. Page 20 presents the issues for the committee's consideration. I'd be happy to answer any questions you may have.
Can you go back to 19?
Yeah.
Page 19? Oh, where was that chart that did the comparison between, maybe it was
Rick, could you speak up a little bit?
I think it's
all right.
one more page back.
And was the one that compared the square foot cost of wood over concrete?
Gotcha. Yeah, that was further back.
That's
Oh.
what. I guess
I'll
it's
find it.
That's
Somebody else has
slide
it.
12.
Really? That far back?
No, it's 18, I think.
No, that's not the one that's on it. I'll find it.
I
Go
think
ahead.
I think it was page 18.
I think it was too. But yes, it's page 18. Explain that box at the bottom, please.
The chart to the on the bottom right of the slide. Yeah.
Construction type.
Yeah, so this was a previous pricing analysis that the development team did. Again, we did a number of pricing exercises over the course of the pre-development period. This was from, I believe, 2020, when we looked at the cost to build Hillendale Gateway compared to 3 other wood over concrete multifamily developments that were being built at that same time. And so it was just a comparative analysis of trying to look at the differences in the cost to build Hillendale Gateway versus other wood over concrete structures. And as part, this was really done to look at the cost of prescient, but we also we're able to look at passive house costs as well. Hillendale Gateway is designed to passive house standards. These other wood over concrete structures were code minimum.
And they were all Bozzuto.
So those numbers are out of date, is what?
Yes,
Right.
those are not, those
Is
were,
it-
yep, I should note that I believe they're from 2020.
Yeah, I did not realize that. Okay, I guess.
I had a number of questions just in terms, beyond the change in cost, understanding the impact of the change to concrete. And I mean, is this just a change in construction material? Does it have any impact on the design of the buildings and number of units, for example?
It does not. We're going to
Okay.
maintain the
Okay.
program, and we certainly are going to maintain the exterior look because we don't want to trigger, having to go
Yeah.
re-entitle.
What about amenities?
Yeah,
Will
no
they
change.
be affected?
No change. Yeah, there's no substantive change to
And-
the program.
Okay, and it won't change the balance of affordable units to market rate units that we've discussed?
Correct.
Okay. And does it have, I mean, the page we're on right now, the slide we're on right now, shows the benefits of passive house, but I guess in terms of the change to concrete, does that affect the environmental impact at all of this property?
It does not affect the passive house performance at all. So that certainly that part stays the same. There are some general ongoing conversations about carbon sequestration, which is different than greenhouse gas emissions, sort of the next, it's like the next level of things. And so concrete, there is an argument that concrete has high carbon sequestration. And so that's sort of what's been the argument around something like using mass timber instead of concrete. So that's something that, is sort of top of mind. We're also investigating presently with the team there are some specific ways in which to better deploy concrete in a more sort of climate conscious way. But at the end of the day, it does not impact at all the relationship between the passive house upfront costs and then the performance of the building based on those systems.
So it doesn't affect the passive house, but what you're saying is that there may be some additional environmental impact from using concrete over steel.
There's not a huge difference between steel and concrete. They're both pretty, they're both from a, carbon perspective, not super. It would really be more like as we go into the future, if this is, if we want to continue to explore those sort of, something like that, it would be more of a question of like, looking at like mass timber. Obviously, wood over podium is less bad. The podium's concrete from a carbon sequestration standpoint, less bad. But the problem, of course, with the wood over podium is that it's height limited to about 6 or 7 stories, and so you're foregoing significant numbers of units on the site, which in and of itself is not green. We should be putting as much density on one site as we can. That's also climate forward. So.
Okay, good. No, thank you. Those are my only questions.
An observation that I wanted to make was I think we're all disappointed in a way that the different and advanced construction process isn't usable in this development. Along with the savings that it had proposed to offer at that time. But I appreciate the effort of staff to continue to examine the best choices that are out there and to continue to research progress that's made that affects costs and quality of life for our residents. And I appreciate the speed and flexibility with which you were able to come back to us in a way that won't affect timing of the delivery, in essence. This is an exciting, beneficial development in that part of the county. It's critically needed. And so I am just rather in awe that you are coming to us with something that's not going to delay this and the benefits that this will provide to the Killendale area. I thank you.
Well, it is delayed 2 months, right?
It will deliver 2 months later at the back end.
Yeah, okay.
Mhm.
Good.
Yep.
Okay.
Is there a motion?
I would move approval of the recommendation that we forward this to the full commission.
And I would second that.
It's been properly moved and seconded, and I would call for the question. All in favor, please say aye.
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 Aye. The motion is approved, and again, thank you, staff, for the quick turnaround and adaptation. Appreciate
Thank you,
it.
commissioners. Thank you very much.
Chelsea?
There's no other business to come before us, and so this meeting is adjourned.
Chelsea?
Yes,
Can
Commissioner?
can you get somebody from IT to call me because something's wrong with my video?
Absolutely will do. Thank you
Thank
so much.
you.
Take care.
Thanks all.
Bye-bye.
Bye.
Bye-bye.
Take care.
Thank you.
Everybody.